Jason Statham mocked by arrogant judge in court. But when Jason reveals a secret, the entire courtroom is left speechless. Watch the emotional twist that's inspiring millions. Like, subscribe, and comment your thoughts on this powerful story. The morning sunlight seeped quietly into the stark white courtroom, casting an almost poetic serenity over the wooden benches and solemn faces. Everyone present knew this would be a memorable trial, but few anticipated exactly how unforgettable it would become. The media had descended upon the courthouse like vultures on fresh prey, their cameras poised and ready, the air thick with anticipation. Jason Statham, the beloved actor renowned for his steely gaze and action-packed films, stood quietly at the defendant's table. Wearing an impeccable suit, neatly pressed, he bore a dignified expression as he calmly awaited the judge's arrival. Unlike his blockbuster roles filled with fights and fury, today Jason appeared humble, reflective, a stark contrast to the confident personas he portrayed countless times on the silver screen. Moments later, Judge Martin Callahan entered the courtroom with an air of authoritative detachment. Known for his sharp wit and harsher judgments, he seldom showed mercy. Callahan had built a reputation not only for fairness, but also for brutally frank honesty, something many found amusing unless they themselves were on trial. As he ascended to his elevated seat, he glanced briefly at Statham and seemed to suppress a smirk. The courtroom fell silent, sensing the charged energy passing invisibly between the judge and the celebrity defendant. "Court is now in session," Judge Callahan announced, his deep voice echoing authoritatively through the hall. He opened a folder in front of him, scanning through the pages with exaggerated indifference. He paused dramatically, clearly savoring the anticipation hanging in the air. "Mr. Jason Statham," he began, dragging out each syllable, as if enjoying the taste of a particularly delicious dessert. "You stand accused of something rather unusual: reckless driving, endangerment of public safety, and causing significant damage to public property. A little too much method acting, perhaps." A murmur rippled through the courtroom. It was no secret that Judge Callahan harbored disdain for celebrities, often believing they felt themselves above the law, protected by wealth and fame. Statham, however, showed no sign of discomfort, merely acknowledging the judge's question with a courteous nod. "Not at all, Your Honor," Jason responded calmly, his voice resonant but respectful. "An unfortunate accident, yes, but never deliberate recklessness." The judge chuckled audibly, his laughter tinged with disbelief, amplified by the courtroom's microphones. It was a deliberate provocation, a small humiliation designed to unsettle Jason. Many in the audience shifted uncomfortably. Even the seasoned court stenographer raised an eyebrow. Statham's lawyer glanced nervously at his client, but Jason remained composed. "You know, Mr. Statham," Callahan continued, leaning forward theatrically, "I've seen many Hollywood stars parade through this court, convinced of their own untouchability. Actors who believe their roles give them immunity in the real world. Frankly, it amuses me. You may be tough in films, but here, you're just another citizen accountable to justice." Callahan's voice held thinly veiled contempt, eliciting uncomfortable chuckles from a few spectators. The judge's clear disdain seemed to feed off the audience's discomfort, but Jason Statham stood firm, his eyes unwavering. "With all due respect, Your Honor," Jason replied clearly and politely, "I have never considered myself above the law. Fame is a fleeting thing. Character is what remains when the spotlight fades." Callahan smirked, amused yet mildly annoyed at Jason's composed dignity. "Admirable sentiment, Mr. Statham. Yet actions speak louder than words, wouldn't you agree?" Jason nodded calmly, his gaze never faltering. "Absolutely, Your Honor. My actions, unfortunately, resulted in this incident. But I'm here to accept responsibility, not to evade it." "Indeed," Callahan said sarcastically. "How noble." The courtroom tensed further. Journalists scribbled furiously into their notebooks, eager to capture every detail of this unfolding drama. Cameras outside flashed relentlessly, reporters awaiting their next headline. The tension between Judge Callahan and Jason Statham was palpable. It seemed only a matter of time before civility fractured into outright confrontation. "I have reviewed the police reports," Judge Callahan continued, "and it says here you claimed you were responding to a crisis, that you were attempting to help someone in distress when a crash occurred. Is that correct?" "Yes, Your Honor," Jason replied sincerely. "There was someone in immediate danger. My intention was to help, not to harm." Callahan scoffed, shaking his head theatrically. "How very cinematic of you, Mr. Statham. An action hero to the rescue in real life. How convenient. It seems your imagination might have overtaken reality." A ripple of laughter emerged from some spectators, but quickly died out under Jason's quiet, dignified response. "Reality often surpasses fiction, Your Honor. Not everything dramatic is contrived." Judge Callahan stared at Jason thoughtfully, his smirk replaced momentarily by a curious frown. For just an instant, perhaps, Callahan glimpsed something in Jason's sincerity that unsettled him. But he shook it off quickly, regaining his previous confident arrogance. "Regardless, Mr. Statham," the judge resumed, dismissing Jason's remark, "your supposed heroics caused substantial damage. The prosecution suggests severe consequences, including jail time. Do you understand the gravity of your situation, or should I simplify it further?" Again, Callahan's mocking tone prompted subdued chuckles from the audience. Jason, however, remained respectful and unshaken. "I fully understand, Your Honor," Jason said evenly, his voice clear and measured, "and I accept whatever judgment the court deems fair." Callahan leaned back in his chair, scrutinizing Jason as though seeing him clearly for the first time. The judge's expression softened, only briefly, revealing a momentary flicker of respect. Quickly, though, his face hardened again into practiced skepticism, the mask of authority he wore daily. "Let's call the first witness," Callahan declared abruptly, signaling an end to their initial sparring match. As the witness stepped up, everyone in the courtroom glanced once more at Jason, wondering how he managed to remain so composed, dignified in the face of Callahan's overt mockery. What none could anticipate, however, was that Jason Statham held a secret, one far deeper and more personal than anyone could possibly imagine. A secret he had yet to reveal. A secret that would soon stun Judge Callahan and everyone watching, turning ridicule into reverence, laughter into respectful silence. And when that secret was finally unveiled, everything they believed about Jason Statham and about justice would be changed forever. But not yet. The courtroom remained ignorant, unaware of the incredible twist that lay waiting, hidden just beneath the surface. Jason took a slow breath, eyes steady, waiting patiently for the perfect moment. And that moment was about to arrive. The courtroom buzzed softly, anticipation crackling through the air like electricity. Judge Callahan's initial mockery had set the stage, painting Jason Statham as just another entitled celebrity. But beneath Jason's composed exterior, hidden beneath layers of respectful humility, was something far more significant. Something that would challenge everyone's assumptions and redefine the meaning of justice. The prosecution called their first witness, Officer Amanda Green, a seasoned and well-respected member of the city's police force. She approached the stand with deliberate confidence, taking her oath solemnly before the court. Green's uniform was crisp, her posture rigid with professionalism. Her eyes, however, revealed a hidden sympathy for Jason, a subtle softness unnoticed by most but perceived by those truly watching. "Officer Green," began Prosecutor Michael Finch, pacing deliberately, his tone authoritative yet inviting. "Please describe to the court exactly what you witnessed on the afternoon of March 12th, when you responded to the scene." Green cleared her throat softly, eyes meeting Jason's for just a brief, compassionate second before addressing the court. "On the afternoon in question, I arrived at approximately 2:45 p.m. to find significant property damage along Westwood Avenue. Several vehicles were damaged, and a lamppost had collapsed onto the roadway. Mr. Statham was standing beside his vehicle, helping an injured pedestrian who appeared to be in distress. Finch nodded, arms folded, subtly casting doubt through his expression. And, Officer Green, how would you describe Mr. Statham's demeanor at the scene? Calm and cooperative, Green answered decisively, unwavering despite Finch's subtle skepticism. He immediately approached me, identified himself clearly, and provided a full account of the incident without hesitation. His primary concern was the injured pedestrian, whom he remained beside until emergency services arrived. Whispers rippled through the court, intrigued by this sympathetic portrayal of Jason. Judge Callahan, however, appeared unmoved, arching a skeptical eyebrow at the officer's testimony. Interesting, Finch continued, pacing gently back and forth, emphasizing his control over the narrative. And yet, Officer Green, the damage caused that afternoon was extensive. Mr. Statham's actions could have resulted in even greater harm. As an officer tasked with protecting public safety, would you say this incident was a clear case of reckless driving? Officer Green paused, thoughtful, understanding the weight of her words. From a strictly procedural viewpoint, Mr. Finch, yes. But having reviewed the circumstances carefully, I sincerely believe Mr. Statham's intentions were honorable. It was clear he acted impulsively, but not maliciously. In my view, he was genuinely attempting to save a life. Jason quietly listened, gratitude shimmering subtly behind his composed exterior. Green's measured testimony surprised many present, adding complexity to a case initially framed by Callahan's dismissive attitude. Judge Callahan, visibly irritated by Green's balanced portrayal, interrupted abruptly. Officer Green, are you suggesting Mr. Statham's celebrity status had no influence on your assessment of his actions? Let's remember that fame has a peculiar way of clouding judgment. Green turned sharply, respectfully meeting the judge's challenging gaze without flinching. Respectfully, Your Honor, I base my assessments solely on evidence and character. Fame is irrelevant. Mr. Statham showed genuine compassion and responsibility. He made a mistake, but one that came from empathy, not arrogance. The judge smiled sarcastically, dismissively shaking his head. Empathy, officer? Compassion? An actor's currency? Certainly, but hardly grounds for immunity from the law. The courtroom tensed, uneasy at Callahan's apparent bias. Finch, sensing an opportunity, moved quickly to reframe the testimony. Officer Green, one final question, Finch began deliberately. You said Mr. Statham claimed he was responding to an emergency, a life-threatening crisis. Did you personally see evidence supporting his claim? Green hesitated briefly, knowing her next words carried significant weight. At the scene itself, Mr. Finch, no immediate proof was apparent. However, thank you, Officer Green. Finch interrupted swiftly, deliberately silencing her nuanced response. No further questions, Your Honor. Judge Callahan nodded dismissively, gesturing to Jason's attorney, Evelyn Hart, to begin cross-examination. Hart rose gracefully, her posture calm yet commanding respect. Officer Green, Evelyn spoke warmly, her tone gentle yet firm. You were about to elaborate on evidence not immediately visible at the scene. Could you please clarify that? Green nodded gratefully, seizing the chance to provide critical context. Certainly, later investigations revealed security footage from nearby establishments, confirming Mr. Statham's account. The footage clearly shows a child, a young boy, running onto Westwood Avenue, directly into traffic. Mr. Statham swerved sharply, deliberately, narrowly avoiding the child and thereby causing the subsequent damage. A heavy silence settled over the courtroom, punctuated only by the scribbling pens of stunned journalists. Judge Callahan shifted uncomfortably, sensing the narrative slipping from his control. Evelyn Hart continued confidently. Officer Green, this child Jason Statham saved, was the child injured? No, Green replied firmly. Because of Mr. Statham's actions, the child emerged unharmed. Without his decisive intervention, it's likely the boy would have been severely injured, possibly worse. Hart paused, letting the gravity of Green's testimony sink in deeply among those present. A palpable shift of perception rippled through the courtroom, sympathy and admiration blossoming slowly towards Jason. But Judge Callahan wasn't yet convinced. He leaned forward skeptically. "Officer Green, despite your rather moving testimony, the facts remain: property damage occurred. Are we to reward reckless behavior simply because the intention was noble?" Green met Callahan's eyes respectfully but firmly. "No, Your Honor. But justice should consider intention, courage, and genuine selflessness alongside outcomes." Callahan smirked again, dismissively leaning back. Touching, officer, yet hardly persuasive in a court of law. The courtroom murmured restlessly, increasingly aware of the judge's apparent prejudice. Jason, however, remained quietly dignified, his confidence unwavering, his expression calm yet deeply thoughtful. Evelyn Hart pressed forward, capitalizing on this momentum. "Officer Green, would you describe Mr. Statham's actions that afternoon as heroic?" Green nodded decisively, without hesitation. What Jason Statham did wasn't merely instinctual. It was courageous, compassionate, and deeply human. The words lingered profoundly in the courtroom, echoing softly, resonating with everyone but seemingly Judge Callahan. The judge's eyes narrowed, stubbornly refusing to acknowledge the deeper truths presented. "Thank you, officer," Hart concluded gently. "No further questions." Green stepped down, her testimony significantly altering the tone and complexity of the trial. The prosecution's initial narrative now appeared increasingly hollow, yet Judge Callahan stubbornly maintained his skepticism. Jason Statham, throughout it all, maintained his humble composure. But behind his calm exterior, he knew the moment had nearly arrived. The moment when he would reveal something far deeper, far more personal, something that would profoundly transform everyone's understanding. A secret that not even Officer Green fully understood. A secret soon to be revealed. A truth hidden beneath layers of humility, patience, and dignity. The courtroom waited expectantly, unaware that everything they assumed was about to shatter. And that moment was almost here. A hush settled over the courtroom as Officer Green took her seat, leaving behind a powerful impression that lingered in the air. Journalists continued scribbling fiercely, sensing that the narrative was shifting, yet unaware that the real twist was yet to come. Judge Callahan shifted uneasily, clearly annoyed by how the testimony had undermined his carefully constructed narrative. Jason Statham, however, remained quietly dignified. His gaze never faltered, radiating calm and quiet strength. Yet within him stirred powerful emotions he had carefully hidden from the public. He knew his moment was nearing, the revelation he had patiently held close, waiting for precisely the right moment to share. Prosecutor Finch, sensing a need to regain control, quickly called the next witness, Benjamin Harper, owner of a small cafe directly across from the crash scene. Harper was a middle-aged man with thick glasses and a nervous disposition. His anxious eyes darted between the judge and the prosecutor, clearly uncomfortable under such scrutiny. "Mr. Harper," Finch began assertively, "please describe for the court exactly what you witnessed from your cafe window on the afternoon of March 12th. Harper adjusted his glasses nervously, clearing his throat as he began. "I was inside my cafe preparing coffee when I heard screeching tires and a loud crash. I immediately ran to the window and saw Mr. Statham's car had struck a street lamp and several parked vehicles. There was chaos everywhere, people shouting, running toward the scene." Finch nodded encouragingly. "And what did you notice specifically about Mr. Statham's actions?" Harper paused thoughtfully. "Well, he got out his vehicle immediately, but he didn't seem angry or panicked. He seemed concerned, really concerned. He immediately ran toward a child standing near the street, picked him up gently, and moved him to safety." The prosecutor frowned slightly, not pleased by Harper's supportive tone, but persisted anyway. "Did Mr. Statham appear reckless in your eyes?" Harper hesitated, carefully considering his answer. "No, sir. Honestly, he seemed to be more worried about everyone else than himself. He He stayed close to the injured pedestrian, talking to him softly until help arrived. Jason's lawyer, Evelyn Hart, smiled subtly, appreciating Harper's honesty. Judge Callahan, however, looked increasingly annoyed, tapping impatiently on his bench. "I must remind everyone," Callahan interjected impatiently, leaning forward, "that intentions, no matter how noble, don't negate responsibility. This is not a film set. Actions have consequences." Harper shrank slightly, intimidated, while Finch quickly wrapped up his questioning. Evelyn Hart gracefully stood to cross-examine Harper, her manner calm, her voice clear and gentle. "Mr. Harper, could you elaborate a bit more on the child Mr. Statham protected? Did you recognize him?" Harper nodded slowly, his expression thoughtful yet deeply serious. "Yes, Miss Hart, actually I did. The boy's name is Liam Coleman, only 8 years old. He's autistic, lives just down the street with his mother. Sweet kid, but sometimes he wanders off unexpectedly. That day, Liam ran out onto Westwood Avenue without warning, straight into heavy traffic. Mr. Statham swerved dramatically to avoid hitting him. There was no doubt that without his quick reflexes, Liam would have been hit by multiple cars. The courtroom fell silent, absorbing Harper's words. The judge, however, remained unimpressed, shaking his head dismissively. "Very dramatic indeed, Mr. Harper, but hardly a justification for reckless behavior." Evelyn Hart pressed forward calmly, unshaken by Callahan's sarcasm. "Mr. Harper, did Liam's mother speak to you after the incident? Did she express her opinion regarding Mr. Statham's actions?" Harper's face brightened momentarily. "Yes, she did. Liam's mother, Kate Coleman, was absolutely distraught, terrified about what might have happened. She said repeatedly how grateful she was for Jason Statham's actions. She considered him a hero, in her own words, an angel sent to save her child." Judge Callahan visibly scoffed, rolling his eyes theatrically. "An angel, Mr. Harper? Really? I'm beginning to wonder if this court has turned into a Hollywood script reading." A few spectators laughed nervously, but the majority sat uncomfortably, sensing that Callahan's sarcasm had crossed a line. Evelyn Hart, however, remained calm, composed, confidently in control. "No further questions, Your Honor," Hart concluded respectfully. Harper stepped down, visibly relieved, yet his testimony hung heavily in the air. It was clear that the narrative initially painted by Callahan was eroding rapidly, leaving the judge increasingly isolated in his skepticism. Still, Callahan stubbornly clung to his disdain, unwilling to concede the narrative to sympathy or admiration. "Let's move forward," Judge Callahan snapped irritably. "Prosecution, call your next witness." But before Finch could stand again, Jason Statham quietly leaned toward his lawyer, whispering something softly. Evelyn Hart paused, surprised at first, then nodded thoughtfully. She stood, addressing the judge respectfully. "Your Honor, my client requests the court's permission to make a brief statement." Callahan, surprised and somewhat irritated, eyed Jason suspiciously. After a brief hesitation, he reluctantly nodded, gesturing impatiently. "Very well, Mr. Statham, but keep it brief. We aren't here to indulge in theatrics." Jason stood slowly, straightening his jacket carefully. The courtroom fell utterly silent, captivated by his presence, intrigued by what he might say. Statham met Callahan's skeptical eyes respectfully but firmly, his voice measured, calm, and deeply sincere. "Your Honor, everyone in this courtroom has heard many things today," Jason began quietly. "Some flattering, others harsh. But there's something about this situation none of you yet fully understand. Something personal, something deeply important to me." Callahan smirked, shaking his head dismissively. "Mr. Statham, please spare us the dramatics." Jason nodded respectfully, undeterred by the judge's skepticism. "With all respect, Your Honor, this isn't drama. This is truth. You see, Liam Coleman isn't simply a child I saved by chance that day. He's someone I deeply care about, someone whose life matters greatly to me, far more personally than anyone here realizes." The courtroom stirred slightly, intrigued by Jason's unexpected revelation. Even Callahan's expression shifted subtly, curiosity briefly overshadowing skepticism. Jason took a deep breath, steadying himself emotionally before continuing. What Officer Green and Mr. Harper couldn't know is that Liam Coleman isn't just a child in distress. He's my nephew, my sister's son. Liam means the world to me, and I've loved him deeply since the moment he was born. His life is infinitely precious, far more valuable to me than anything, including my career, reputation, or even my freedom. Gasps echoed throughout the courtroom, stunned journalists scribbling frantically, spectators leaning forward, entranced by Jason's poignant revelation. Judge Callahan, visibly taken aback, opened his mouth briefly, then closed it again, clearly unsettled. Jason Statham continued gently yet firmly, each word deeply heartfelt. So yes, Your Honor, my actions caused damage, and I accept responsibility. But every choice I made that day came from love, compassion, and genuine humanity, not arrogance or recklessness. If saving Liam meant facing consequences, I willingly accept them. Silence reverberated powerfully through the room. Even Callahan, for the first time, seemed speechless, unable to immediately formulate a response. Jason's words had pierced deeply, shifting perspectives radically, transforming ridicule into respect, mockery into admiration. Yet the deepest secret, and even more powerful truth, still lay hidden, just beneath the surface. The revelation of Liam as Jason's nephew was only the beginning. Because the most powerful twist, the revelation that would completely redefine the trial, the judge, and everyone's perspective of Jason Statham, had yet to emerge. But it was almost time. The courtroom was profoundly still. Jason Statham's revelation had sent shockwaves through every individual present, shifting the entire context of the trial in a heartbeat. Cameras flashed incessantly outside, journalists racing to report the stunning turn of events. Even Judge Callahan sat momentarily speechless, visibly shaken, as he attempted to reconcile his earlier skepticism with the heartfelt sincerity Jason had displayed. Jason stood quietly, a humble and dignified figure amidst the profound silence that followed his deeply personal confession. Evelyn Hart placed a comforting hand gently on his shoulder, offering silent reassurance, a subtle yet meaningful gesture of support. The judge cleared his throat, trying to regain control, though his previous mocking confidence was now visibly diminished. "Mr. Statham," Callahan finally spoke, his tone now notably less dismissive, tinged instead with uncertainty and newfound curiosity. "Are you saying you deliberately placed yourself in harm's way, risking not only your own life but others' safety, because this child was your nephew?" Jason nodded calmly, his voice unwavering and sincere. "Your Honor, I swerved to avoid harming Liam. In that moment, my only thought was his safety. There was no time to calculate consequences, only to act. But it wasn't recklessness. It was a calculated risk born from love. I did what I felt any human being with a heart would have done in my place." The courtroom was silent again, absorbing the powerful sincerity of Jason's words. Judge Callahan, visibly struggling between skepticism and admiration, shifted uncomfortably, eyes glancing briefly around the courtroom, sensing public sentiment shifting dramatically in Jason's favor. The prosecution, recognizing the seismic shift, appeared unsure how to proceed. Prosecutor Finch looked nervously toward Judge Callahan, hesitating briefly before speaking cautiously. "Your Honor, in light of Mr. Statham's recent revelation, the prosecution requests a short recess to reevaluate our position." Callahan, slightly startled but regaining his composure, nodded reluctantly. "Very well. We'll adjourn briefly. 15 minutes recess." As the judge exited, murmurs erupted throughout the courtroom. Journalists flooded out quickly, racing to break the stunning news, leaving Jason standing quietly beside Evelyn Hart. She turned toward him gently, eyes filled with respect and curiosity. "Jason," she whispered softly, you never mentioned Liam was your nephew." This changes everything. Why didn't you say anything before?" Jason smiled faintly, looking thoughtfully toward the courtroom doors. "Because it wasn't about me, Evelyn. I didn't want to focus on my celebrity, my family, or sympathy. I simply wanted the truth to come out naturally, to speak for itself." Evelyn nodded thoughtfully, admiring Jason's quiet integrity even more deeply now. "But Jason, do you realize what this means? Judge Callahan can't ignore this. You've fundamentally changed the case. You've revealed your true heart to everyone." Jason's eyes softened momentarily, deep emotion flickering briefly beneath his composed exterior. "Maybe, but the most important thing is that Liam is safe. Whatever the court decides now, I can live with it, knowing I did right by him." Meanwhile, in chambers, Judge Callahan paced restlessly, deeply conflicted. He'd made a career of skepticism, frequently mocking celebrity defendants who relied on fame and privilege to evade justice. But Jason Statham's revelation had shaken him profoundly, piercing through his hardened skepticism with genuine humanity. Callahan sat at his desk heavily, flipping slowly through the evidence, re-examining Officer Green's and Benjamin Harper's testimonies. He had assumed, arrogantly perhaps, that Jason's actions were motivated by vanity, reckless bravado, or perhaps arrogance born of celebrity entitlement. But now, it seemed painfully clear that his assumptions had been deeply flawed. The judge rubbed his temples thoughtfully, sighing deeply. He was faced with a profound moral dilemma: uphold strict adherence to procedure, punishing Jason's admitted property damage, or recognize the genuine humanity underlying Jason's actions and offer leniency. 15 minutes later, Judge Callahan returned to a now hushed courtroom, taking his seat slowly, visibly subdued, thoughtful. Jason stood respectfully once again, his posture still dignified yet humble, Evelyn Hart by his side, ready to support him whatever the outcome. Callahan cleared his throat, speaking softly, thoughtfully. "Before we proceed, I'd like to address something personal. Mr. Statham, when I first heard your case, I admit I had preconceived notions. I've seen many actors and celebrities in this courtroom, often detached from reality, self-entitled, convinced their status would exempt them from responsibility. Initially, I saw you through that lens, unfairly dismissing your actions as mere theatrics." The judge paused, clearly uncomfortable yet determined to speak candidly. "But today you've shown this courtroom, and me personally, a depth of character and humanity I did not anticipate. You acted instinctively, bravely, to protect someone you love. That cannot be overlooked." He took a long breath, the courtroom utterly silent, hanging on each word. "However, the fact remains that damage was caused and laws were broken. The court must balance compassion with accountability. But, Mr. Statham, I now recognize the extraordinary circumstances behind your actions, and that deserve serious consideration." Jason listened quietly, his expression respectful, his eyes showing genuine gratitude for the judge's newfound sincerity. Yet before Judge Callahan could proceed further, an unexpected commotion erupted at the courtroom doors. Heads turned abruptly, startled, as Kate Coleman, Jason's sister and Liam's mother, entered swiftly, carrying young Liam gently by her side. "Your Honor, please," Kate spoke passionately, her voice trembling yet strong. "Please, may I say something?" Callahan hesitated briefly, visibly surprised, yet sensing the importance of this moment, nodded respectfully. "Please, go ahead." Kate stepped forward, holding Liam's small hand gently. Liam, clearly overwhelmed by the crowded courtroom, clung tightly to his mother's side, eyes wide yet trusting. "Your Honor," Kate began, her voice powerful yet gentle, her sincerity captivating the entire courtroom. "Jason hasn't told you the full truth, not because he's hiding something, but because he's too humble. He not only saved Liam's life that day, he's always been there for us. When Liam was diagnosed with autism, Jason quietly paid for Liam's treatments, never once asking for recognition. He supported me emotionally, financially, and unconditionally, always behind the scenes, never seeking credit." She paused, deeply emotional, tears glistening softly in her eyes. My brother is not reckless, arrogant, or entitled. He's selfless, kind, genuinely humble. The kind of person who steps up quietly when no one else is watching. Please, Your Honor, understand. Jason is exactly the kind of hero our society desperately needs. The entire courtroom was deeply moved. Callahan sat stunned, visibly emotional himself, his skepticism shattered completely. Jason watched silently, his own eyes briefly moistening, deeply touched by his sister's heartfelt defense. His humility had prevented him from sharing these deeply personal acts publicly. But now, at this profound moment, the full truth had emerged. Yet even now, one final powerful twist still lay hidden. Something Jason himself had chosen not to reveal. A secret he had deliberately kept concealed. One final truth that would shatter expectations completely. A revelation even more profound, more stunning, more deeply moving. And the moment to reveal that ultimate truth was finally here. An overwhelming silence had fallen over the courtroom, resonating deeply with emotion. Kate Coleman's heartfelt testimony about her brother's unyielding compassion had broken down the last remnants of skepticism, leaving Judge Callahan visibly moved, his former arrogance completely stripped away. Every person present was profoundly touched, recognizing Jason Statham not as a Hollywood celebrity, but as a truly extraordinary human being. Yet, unbeknownst to all, one final truth remained hidden. An even more profound revelation, one Jason himself had silently borne without ever drawing attention to it. Judge Callahan composed himself slowly, deeply affected by everything he'd just heard. He cleared his throat gently, preparing to speak, but Jason quietly raised his hand respectfully, drawing everyone's attention. The judge paused, nodding gently, offering Jason space to speak. "Your Honor," Jason began, his voice calm, powerful in its quiet humility. "I deeply appreciate what my sister said today. Her words mean everything to me. But there's one final truth I feel must be shared before you decide my fate. Something deeply personal I've held close, something that truly explains why I reacted as I did." Every eye focused intently on Jason, breaths held in anticipation. Judge Callahan leaned forward, genuinely curious, his previous cynicism fully dissolved, replaced by earnest respect. Jason continued quietly. "Many people in this courtroom today have portrayed me as a hero. But truthfully, the real hero here isn't me. It's Liam." Jason looked gently toward his nephew, young Liam Coleman, who stood quietly beside his mother, watching Jason with wide, innocent eyes. Jason's voice softened further, becoming deeply emotional, powerful in its sincerity. "You see, not long ago, doctors diagnosed me with a heart condition, a condition that could have easily forced me to end my acting career, one that meant I had to avoid any unnecessary stress or physical danger. That day, as Liam ran into the road, I knew exactly what was at stake. Not only was Liam's life in immediate danger, but I also knew that the stress of such a drastic action could put my own life at risk. I made that choice willingly, knowing fully the potential consequences." Gasps echoed throughout the courtroom, deeply shocked by Jason's stunning confession. Evelyn Hart, his lawyer, stared at him in disbelief, her eyes moistening with tears. Kate covered her mouth softly, overwhelmed, clearly unaware Jason had kept this secret even from her. Jason continued calmly, his voice steady despite the heavy emotion lingering behind his words. "In that instant, it wasn't fame, arrogance, or recklessness guiding my decision. It was the profound love I felt for Liam, a love so strong it made every consequence insignificant. Yes, my actions caused damage and frightened people, but Liam's safety, his precious life, meant more to me than anything, even my own survival." Judge Callahan sat back, utterly stunned. For a man who'd spent his career dissecting truth from theatrics, this unembellished sincerity was unlike anything he'd ever encountered. The courtroom hung on Jason's every word, profoundly moved by the revelation of such extraordinary selflessness. Jason looked gently around the courtroom, his expression humble, composed, deeply genuine. My heart survived that day, thankfully, but Liam taught me something incredibly important. He showed me true courage. Every day, he faces challenges few of us could imagine. Yet he meets each moment bravely, fearlessly, with unconditional joy and innocence. Liam taught me what real strength looks like. Not what I portray in films, but genuine strength, true bravery. He paused gently, his gaze returning once more to Liam, who watched his uncle quietly, trustingly. Jason's voice softened further, his words now deeply intimate, addressed directly to Liam, yet resonating profoundly with everyone present. Liam, Jason spoke gently, kneeling slightly to speak directly to him. You're my hero, buddy. Your bravery inspired mine. Your strength gave me courage. Whatever happens here today, remember that you taught your Uncle Jason more about life and courage than he could ever teach you. The courtroom was now openly emotional, moved beyond words. Even hardened journalists were visibly shaken, discreetly wiping away tears. Evelyn Hart quietly brushed tears from her cheeks, while Kate held Liam closely, her eyes moist with profound pride and love. Judge Callahan, his skepticism utterly vanished, his perspective fundamentally altered by Jason's powerful honesty, now fully understood the incredible human depth of the man standing humbly before him. He cleared his throat, deeply moved, his voice quiet yet firm as he addressed the court. Mr. Statham, he began, his tone deeply respectful, sincere in a way he'd rarely shown publicly. Your courage and humility today have deeply impacted everyone in this courtroom, including myself. I must admit, I initially misjudged you. I saw celebrity status rather than humanity, arrogance rather than selflessness. For that, I offer my sincerest apologies. Callahan paused briefly, gathering his thoughts before continuing gently. Justice is not simply about punishment. It's about fairness, compassion, and understanding the human spirit. Yes, damage was done, but far greater damage would have occurred had you chosen differently. Today, this court recognizes not just actions, but intentions, the courage, love, and selflessness behind your decision. Judge Callahan looked around the courtroom thoughtfully, then returned his eyes to Jason, deeply respectful. In recognition of your extraordinary bravery and selflessness, this court dismisses all charges against you. Furthermore, I publicly commend you, not for your celebrity, but for the extraordinary person you've shown yourself to be. Applause erupted spontaneously throughout the courtroom, resonating powerfully with deep admiration and gratitude. Kate, tears flowing freely, embraced Liam tightly, whispering softly, proudly, into her son's ear. Jason stood humbly, quietly absorbing the overwhelming emotions flooding the courtroom. Evelyn Hart hugged him gently, deeply proud. Reporters began scribbling rapidly, capturing every profound detail, profoundly inspired by the powerful humanity revealed today. Judge Callahan, moved to his core, offered Jason a rare, genuine smile, speaking softly one final time. Jason, thank you. Not only did you save Liam that day, you've reminded all of us, especially me, what justice truly means. Jason nodded respectfully, offering a gentle, humble smile. He stepped quietly toward Liam, kneeling gently, meeting his nephew's eyes tenderly. Hey, buddy, Jason whispered softly, warmly. Ready to go home? Liam smiled gently, nodding, reaching out to hug Jason tightly. Thank you, Uncle Jason. Jason held his nephew lovingly, quietly grateful. Today had begun with ridicule, mockery, and judgment, but ended with profound humanity, humility, courage, and compassion. Outside the courtroom, as Jason stepped out quietly, cameras flashed incessantly, reporters shouting questions eagerly. But Jason simply smiled warmly, holding Liam gently by the hand, quietly walking forward, unassuming, humble, deeply fulfilled. Because Jason Statham knew something far deeper than fame or applause had occurred today. He knew he'd reminded everyone, perhaps especially Judge Callahan, what truly matters most. That real heroes aren't defined by films, fame, or fortune, but by courage, humility, and the quiet strength to risk everything for those they love. And today, Jason Statham had quietly, humbly proven exactly that. A truth far more powerful, more inspiring, and infinitely more meaningful than any Hollywood script ever could be. A twist no one saw coming, yet one they would remember forever.